I am very, very excited to be back this week with our fifth edition of our TL Talk. We started this week on Wednesday with our first TL Talk Brazil, which was an amazing success with a very special guest, Abida Diniz. So this is our fourth edition of the Global Talk in English. And I can't be happier. We've had over 6,000 people listening in. So if you are, we've had a tremendous support from our travel community. So if you're a travel agent, an IC, tour operator, hotel owner, working in the restaurant business, now with Natalie here from the fashion business, a journalist, thank you so much for tuning in. I know our lives are upside down. There's a lot going on. So I truly appreciate you taking the time to log in and listen to our friends. For those that do not know me, my name is Tina Lira. I am the founder of TL Portfolio. I opened TL Portfolio 8 years ago. I am Brazilian, American. My mother's Czech. I grew up in Mexico and lived for many years in Singapore. So hopefully I can connect a little bit with all of you in some way, shape, or form. And our objective here today is to really create a channel of optimism. And the reason we started this was because I felt there was a need amongst our friends and partners in the industry to hear, to have a light at the end of the tunnel, to hear the positive side, to transform yourself, to get inspired, to have a reason to wake up in the morning, get out of bed and feel excited despite the storm we're all living. And so what better way than connecting some of the most inspiring people I know in the industry, people that I admire hugely and I'm very lucky to know, and share them with you. And that was the idea behind these talks. I have to thank my whole team. We are a team of 17 women. So, you know, we have a team that has now gone from becoming salespeople to DJ. So Vivian, congrats on the song. It was highly appreciated. And everybody's kind of reinventing themselves. But as long as we stick together, I think we're definitely going to be okay. I want to introduce this panel, as I said, friends and professionals that I admire hugely. I'm going to start with Natalie Klein. Natalie is an icon in the fashion industry in Brazil. She's the founder and president of NK Store. It's a multi-brand store in Brazil, which now has stores in São Paulo and Rio. She has revolutionized the fashion world. She is a Harvard alumni, an avid in continued learning. And I am very happy to have her here because I think Natalie brings a different perception to what we're living. And I think us, and I speak about me within the travel industry, have so much to learn and gain from looking outside our walls. And if there's somebody we can learn from, it's Natalie. So thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. I also wanted to introduce Michael Holtz. Anybody that's in travel knows the name Michael Holtz, the brand SmartFlyer. He's the CEO of SmartFlyer, which he opened straight out of university in 1990. He's really created a benchmark in the travel agencies. I think he revolutionized it by really bringing people in that had relationships, that understand what travelers are looking for, and giving them a platform where they can work and create and really go crazy on these amazing itineraries. So Michael, thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hard to put Serge into words. He's a man that's broken the mold in every way, shape, or form when it comes to entertainment, when it comes to events. Serge created ILTM in 2002 and then sold it in 2008 and went on to revolutionize, once again, the events world by creating a series of incredible events such as Pure, LA Miami, We Are Africa, and Farther East. And Serge, I think it goes without saying that your creativity and your ability to create such a dynamic and fun, and when you think about events and travel and the travel and trade shows, there's nothing further away from Burning Man. And yet there you are bringing that closer than ever together and making us party as hard as ever, work as hard as ever, bond as much as possible, all in one go. So thank you for your contribution. And everybody is dying to hear from you and to see what the future will bring. No pressure.
Thank you. I'm blushing. I'm blushing. My head is inflating as well.
No, it's all true. for those that know Farhad, there is a few things that can describe. He is the former global international executive editor of Departures of Centurion magazine and of the Compendium by Centurion. He's also a former TV news executive. He's a speaker, a consultant, an advisor, and all the rest of the words we can imagine. He's currently overseeing a glossy publication for NetJets, which he masterminded a few years ago. But I think more than anything, Farhad is a burst of energy. When you can be in the busiest trade show, you can be in the busiest road, but when he comes, nobody misses him. So it's a pleasure to have you here, and I'm happy to call you all my friends, which is, I think, the biggest honor of all. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and ask all of you to answer the same question so that we can get started. And maybe, Natalie, I'll start with you. If you could share with us, when did this situation, this new reality, the coronavirus, really kind of hit you? When did the reality hit? And if you could briefly tell us what's keeping you up at night, what's in your mind?
I think when it hit us, it was in the beginning of March, and we kind of knew what was going to come because we were following China and then Europe, and then we know we were going to be the next ones. So we had this little advantage knowing what were the next steps. So we had like 2 weeks to think that if it hit us, we had to have a plan. So that was the first glimpse that I had 2 weeks before everything happened. So in Brazil, everything stopped in March 16th. That's when I really realized how tough was going to be to stay with shops closed. And fashion, of course, is not in the first list of the priorities of people. And our e-commerce was 7% of our revenue today. And we really had to stop everything and think, how are we going to go through this? And so the first thing, we created a committee with the 6 main, we had to build our own guidebook to go through this situation. So we created groups focused on the 6 pillars of NK. So in a week, we had all described in which way we should keep going the situation, the relationship with clients, relationship with the team, relationship with suppliers and vendors, the transparency of our revenues, and how was the financial situation of the shop. So that was the first measures that we made. We shared all the information with our staff, and since then we've been trying to have a transformation, which is I think it's going to be very meaningful in the future. It's time to reset and rebalance and try to find the north again.
For sure. No, I think we're all going through a major transition, and I think you were very quick to respond. And I think that makes a big difference. You were the first store to close, I think, in Brazil, and that's really very, very unique. Serge, can you tell us a little bit about where you are and when it hit you?
Yeah, well, I think that the first thing is, obviously, I was following the news in early January when there was like I think mortality rate quite high, double-digit figures in China. So I think we, from mid-January, we start paying attention. And but to be honest with you, as like most, we feel like we have seen Zika before, and we have seen SARS before, and we see H1N1 before, and I think that we imagine that it will have an effect on our business, but we are very far from imagining that it will be as bad as it is. So from the 1st of February, we started to have meetings, but I think that where it really sunk for me was that early February, I was actually skiing, and I was on the slope, and I was with a friend where his daughter was based in Milan, and basically the University in Milan closed down, but as a result of that, there was such a panic on social media from all the students that overnight all the students of that university left. They were foreign students, left the country to come back because they were afraid to get into lockdown. And I think we said, like, well, this is really serious. This is really paying attention. And from that day when we come back, I think it was the 2nd week of February, so there was not, everything was just rumors at the time, but we had meetings every day in our company. Every day at 10 o'clock, we had a meeting about what's happening, what's the update, what is the contingency plan, and so on, because we realized it will be far more serious than we ever expected.
And did you have any idea at that point that Pure was at risk, that you might have to cancel Pure at that stage? Did that ever cross your mind?
No, because we even very early on modelized the modelized the epidemics on curve. Obviously, we're not epidemiologists ourselves, but it was not widely available, and obviously we all flattened the curves, but we didn't think it was that big, and so on. And we thought like, well, it might have some effect on our event. Let's wait and see. But we have no idea. And the main thing is that I think there was confusing information at some stage, by some authorities that were saying that travel should still be allowed, and borders shouldn't be closed, while in the same time praising China. So all of the thing was very confusing, and we thought like, well, we don't really know ourselves, but the experts say that it's okay to travel, and I think that for us it means that we had to follow in many ways advice to the best specialists that at the time didn't say that what we live today will ever happen.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody could fathom what was going to happen. Michael, where were you, and what's on your mind?
Well, I mean, late February into early March, Arena and I were in Rwanda on our SmartFlyer 1 trip for our top SmartFlyer agents globally, along with Daniel Brown from DM Africa. And, we were watching the news, what was going on in Italy, and we obviously were concerned. Arena devised a work from home plan, so we kind of had that, in our back pocket if we had to go that route. But I guess, what gives me comfort is that the reason why I'm in the travel industry is that stock market crash of 87, I was going to go into finance. And in 87, I ended up in the travel industry because the financial markets were bad. I mean, I've been through, the global financial crisis, 9/11, but as Serge said, we never really thought it would be as bad as it is now. But we still have hope, and we know that eventually things are going to rebound and hopefully, stronger than ever.
I agree. That's definitely going to happen for sure. Nobody has a doubt that it'll come back. Farhad,
it's just a question of when.
It's just a question of when. Farhad, where were you creating trouble?
I was pinballing around Europe, and then my current and first wife, Lady Heydari, and I were in New York, and we were sort of sheltered from the news. Really, I mean, as you know, when you're in the States, you're sort of slightly sequestered anyway from what else is going on around the world. But then we started seeing what was happening in Italy, obviously. And I got back here I think it was the 8th of March, and my wife got back here the week after. And then it really, really hit us that this thing is going to totally subsume and consume our lives. But we've been monitoring it because, of course, she's in the hospitality industry and they've got properties in China. So the rolling wave that we all talk about, we've been watching it, but it was sort of like a slow tsunami. We didn't really feel like it was going to attack us or hit us or affect us. We just sort of thought it was, well, it's over there. But once it hit Italy, it sort of got our attention.
I can imagine. And for those that do not know, Anna Nash, his first and current wife, which I think is a fantastic way to put it, very, very you, is with Amman Resorts, and she is phenomenal. Hopefully we'll have her on our talks very soon. So the way that it works is we have asked some of the most important media in North, South America, and now we currently have some media contributing from Europe as well. So if you're watching us and you're a journalist and you'd like to send a question, please get our contact details and you can participate by sending us questions. So this question, the first question is going to go to Michael. Michael, the question is from L'Officiel Brazil. Which is an important fashion magazine with about 50,000 copies per month. The journalist Paula Rochelle. The question is, considering how fluid everything is, what is the scenario that you're using to manage your agency today, and how do you communicate that to your team? Second question she's also asking is, what online initiatives have you taken which have generated the best effects?
That's a great question. So within SmartFlyer, we speak to each other very frequently. We've done a lot of online Zoom calls for the people within SmartFlyer. We're in touch with our team in Australia. We talk to people literally 7 days a week. As far as bookings go, we are seeing some bookings come in. Obviously, the pace of the bookings are low. We're dealing with changing existing reservations. Some people are canceling, some people are postponing, but it's all very fluid. It changes daily. We all, watch CNN, we click on to see what's going on, with Bloomberg, and we're just trying to figure out, on a day-by-day basis, how to help the agents deal with our customers. At the end of the day, it's all about customers.
I agree. Serge, do you find the same thing? Do you find that's the same thing in your side of the world?
What do you mean?
In communicating the current situation to your team and managing the fluidity of the situation?
Yeah, well, I think for us, we are, we are basically taking the news on a daily basis, remodelizing everything, looking at all the different scenarios, and which are changing on a daily basis. But we keep communicating on a regular basis and making all the plans possible.
Yeah, trying to take one day at a time. I think one of the things that a lot of our panels have talked about is about taking small decisions, because things change so quickly that if you try to take a big decision, you'll get the rug pulled out of you the next day when the situation completely changes. So I think that's something to keep in mind.
But I think just one thing, if I might say, I think the main thing in communication with the team is that we try to be a good captain in a stormy weather, which is we have to remain quite calm and keep going with the ships and making sure that we focus on the job ahead, which is I think very important, because otherwise we can get carried away by all the changes that change not only every day, but sometimes 3 or 4 times a day.
For sure. Farhad, I'm going to ask you the next question. It's from Made Magazine. I've actually had to combine a few questions from journalists. So it's not the exact question that Eduardo Simões asked, but I want you to tell us a little bit of how do you see the opportunities for travel from where you stand today in relationship to gastronomy, aviation, and fashion? Like, you're sitting in London, you are in connection with multiple publications. What opportunities do you see ahead?
Well, there are lots of opportunities, so long as you feel comfortable to be the end user and to purvey those. So I've always said that, and this has been mentioned many times in the public sphere, that it's going to be a matter of trust. You're going to go places that you have the trust in the final product, the service, all the intangibles. And so I think a lot of people are going to try to figure out where those places are, whether it's contrarian travel, whether they're going to do staycations, whether they're going to go places that are less populated, whether they're going to go to properties or hotel groups or entities that don't have too many pinch points, i.e. long check-in desks, So there are a lot of different intangibles, but it all comes down to mitigating that level of fear, to instill a sense of control and confidence in the end user, and to try to figure out a place that is actually going to be rewarding and that you want to spend your money at.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And it's all about finding a place and people that you trust, right? At the end of the day, I think that's what helps us within our community.
It's if you've been somewhere and the setup and you trust the owner or the managing director or the general manager, and they have an affinity for you, well, they're going to look after you rather than you being an anonymous person. And that's what's going to close the circle. It's going to make travel much more intimate, and you're going to want to go and purvey places that actually take the time to not only do the health and safety element of it, but also the care and consideration for the people that come to purvey them.
I agree. And I think, Natalie, I'd love for you to share a little bit of your story of how that played a role in fashion. You talk a lot about continued education. I know that you're still very active with your Harvard alumni classes. And I was very impressed when you told the story of how you were very quick and you were able to find a way to tighten your belt, reduce your fixed costs and so forth. And yet you were able to increase your sales force by 10 times, if not more. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from that. I'd love for you to share that story with us.
so after I attended the alumni classes for leadership in time of crisis. Of course, they said that this time is different from any other time. So probably all the answers, they won't come top down. So you have to get your team together and create all those pillars that are important for your company. So of course, we had to reduce the salaries. We had to check all the contracts and cancel few of the contracts. So what I had today, I had like 25 people on the sales floor. And as a people, they could run after the difference of the salary that they would get. We created a campaign called We're All Salespeople. So from one day to the other, we are the platform. We created codes for all of the employees that we have, 200 employees, so they all can sell through their codes on the internet. So that was the first move. The second move, we invited friends from NK, friends and family, that they wanted to join the group together. So what we did is, instead of commission that it's 4%, which is usually here in the market in Brazil, we doubled the commission, and you could make an option either to keep 4% and give away 4% for charity, or you can give away 8%, the full commission prices. So it was very nice because people, they were so engaged, because everybody, they willing to help, they want to help somehow. So they became salespeople for NK. So suddenly, from day to night, I had, instead of 25 people selling, I had 225 people selling NK. So that was so nice for brand awareness and for people that are engaging, because sometimes it's really hard to communicate fashion, especially on these moments. But fashion, it's like traveling. It's a way of escapism. It's a way to escape your reality and think of nicer things or good things, and it doesn't make your life so sour and so tough. So there's a role of each one of us, or in what we're doing in an industry. So it helps a lot. And then after a week, we had this guidebook that was going to tell everything that we're going to do. So the whole company knew what actions we were taking. Another thing that we did, after 20 years of the shop, we really had a very large inventory of fabrics we've been using and reusing. But of course, after 22 years, it's something that you can't help. We had a lot. So we opened the inventory, and we sold the inventory for very symbolic prices for small companies, because they're going to have very hard time on credit. They won't be able to buy on the industry because they're charging very much now. And the importation became almost impossible because the dollar, our currency, has gone totally down. So from day to night, it was 3-1, now it's 6-1. So they're all looking for internal raw materials, and we had it at home. So I think we really had to think the role of NK and the role that we have in all the chain
community,
the supply chain. So we sold all the inventory for small companies, for small designers, so they can keep on moving this
keep
wheel.
the chain going. I think there's so much to learn, and just so I can share, if you're not Brazilian listening to us, you imagine the whole country, everybody going in crisis as to what is going on, and people are trying to figure it out. And a question of, within a few weeks, this, and I'll tell you how it impacted me. You have, nobody's thinking about fashion. Sorry for that moment. I think very few people were thinking about fashion. And overnight, Natalie was able to have pretty much gain the voice of social media within the most important influencers, saying proud that they were becoming salespeople. I'm a salesperson of NK Store, to family, to everybody selling. And suddenly buying wasn't a taboo. Buying was a way to help. And people who didn't need the money were even more engaged to sell NK, so that they could help the supply chain. So I think in travel, we have a lot to learn also, to look at how can we use our resources. If we have our team, how can we change everybody's role around to make the most of it? So I think it's a fantastic initiative, and thanks for sharing that with us. Serge, I have a question from you, from a good friend of mine, Juliana Sage. She's a freelance journalist, and she writes for numerous publications like GQ and Vogue and National Geographic and Forbes. Her question is, what is the biggest change you perceive in this new reality? When thinking about the world of events, what should companies do to make people feel safe and secure?
So first, the biggest change itself. So I think it's important we take stock of what we're going through. It's like, this is going to be not like 2008 or other crises we've ever seen. I mean, we're told this is the biggest financial crisis for 300 years. So I think the first thing to expect is that this will have a profound structural social change in absolutely everything. It might create cultural change, it might create way in way we interact, and so on and so on. But I think for me is like I think we're arriving to the end of a cycle. And I think that this cycle is that, through the 50s until very recently, we were very much something where the big companies can actually rule everything and to almost like bully the smaller company. And now we're having something which started obviously with social media, but it's appearing even more through this crisis of COVID-19, is that there'll be far more collaborations between people. The world is definitely becoming more, we're truly making a global world local. Is going to be fundamentally created by humanizations of everything that we do. And the concept of collaboration will have never be as great as, will change everything. And we'll see that there'll be, we see collaborations to look for a vaccine, but we probably have seen that we are collaborating far more, not only between our peers, but also between our competitors. And so that's something which is very important for me, is like the world is becoming more human, is becoming much kinder, far more generous, and there will be far more collaboration. I think we have discovered really that we need, we're craving community, and I think that everyone around us is trying to find where the community of real friends, where the community of real industry friends, in which they can trust and can operate. So that's my first aspect, is that what I think is going to be the great revolutions that's going to happen. The second part, it's about, first of all, probably what you say is about how we make this show safe and relevant. So I think that the first thing I'd like to say is that what this crisis has proven is we are really into the middle of a huge paradox, which is that at a time where community and collaborations is so important, and I really believe that in many ways digitizations allow us to make a global world truly local, but it will never replace this physical interaction that we've got with someone. Like just the effect of touching someone as a huge aspect, looking them clearly in the eyes as a huge aspect. This will never be replaced. But I think that at this moment, the aspect of trust between people doing business, the aspect of creating this trust through a concept of shared experience and collaborating has never been so great. We are currently in a situation where, like I was explaining a bit before in a briefing, is like we're a bit like people in the during the prohibitions, where what we do is not neither possible or might be even morally questionable in the current situations. And I think that we don't have yet, for me, something which is very important is the moral license to operate. And obviously, the reason why we postpone our shows is not because we believe that they might not happen. Actually, it could have been possible, especially for Morocco. But we didn't believe that we had the moral license to operate for a show in September, because we didn't know if there will be a risk, and we wanted to run that risk for the people who participate at the event. But hopefully we remain still a little bit more optimistic, and we've got a few months to decide about our other shows. Now, in case of, so the first thing to remember is that I think that not only trade shows are not going to disappear, but I think they've never been as relevant as they are now. And the other thing which is very important, which is particularly in our industry, is that when we created LA Miami a few years ago, there was these questions: are the travel agents actually relevant, and why should we need another travel shows? And actually, artificial intelligence will solve that problems. And we all know that in the US, they decided to put some supercomputer to find a treatment for COVID-19. They haven't found it. The only way to do this is to have empirical research between human beings all around the world. And I think that one thing that this crisis has proven is that actually the real value of travel agents how they managed to shelter many of their partners and hoteliers, how they managed to protect them, how managed to advise them, and how they managed to advise the clients. And they have actually proven to be absolutely invaluable and added tremendous value for the people in the industry. So that's the first part about where we are and the relevance of the sevens. Now, I think that for me, in many ways, when you have a show, is that making them safe might not be the greatest challenge, because we can all put markers, and on the floors, and have people putting temperatures at the entrance, and everyone wearing a mask, and having hand sanitizers everywhere, and all these kind of things. And that's not the most difficult thing to do. I think the most difficult to do is that when you create events that are supposed to be happy and joyous, is how to make actually the safety happy being fun. And I think that it can be done. We talk about that. The fact is, like, you can take temperatures and say, like, are you too hot, or you are too cool for school, or how you can create something with the mask and make them pink. It's all about finding kind of a gamifications, or you can give cool sunglasses to people, and because like this they can be protected. I've seen there is restaurant in Germany that they put things on the hat of people, which is like the 1.50 meter wide, and you put a hat there, and you create automatic social distancing between people. So I think that the thing that people should be feeling now is that we are an industry which is based on emotions. We are an industry which is based on, I think for me, luxury travel has always been the promise of a life that's been optimized and upgraded. And the fact is, we cannot just stand for just basically being safe. Is that it's how we make safe uber cool, and people feeling like, oh, they did that, but that was so cool. And and we're expecting, like, instead of having hand sanitizers like in hotels, if you go to Morocco, is that they give you something with they wash your hands, and it's smell of rose, and there is some petal. And I think that because of that, the thing that we'll have learned actually from COVID-19 is that I don't know about you, but I've never washed my hands so many times in a day. I didn't know you have to sing happy birthday for 20 seconds when you are doing it, but now I know all the tricks. And I think that is going to create great ritual, and the language is going to change. People are going to talk more about, we used to say, I think apparently because of the Spanish flu, we used to say good health to people, when they were drinking wine, because health was very important. And all this has gone. So I think that we're going to find new way to be emotionally sensitive to our clients. I think that we're going to find new way to be safe in our exhibition or at hotels, because we don't have something which is particularly dissimilar. But the challenge for all of us is to find the right narrative that suit our brands, that basically made safe being cool. And you might want it to do edgy or luxury, but you need to find your language. And I think there is many different ways to do it.
I think it's all very true. And by the way, Serge, I think I speak on behalf of a lot of people that have tickets to Pure. And so if borders are open, please go, because we'll probably all be waiting for you by the pool somewhere, regardless if there's a show or not. I think everybody is crazy to get together. And that's one show that if there's a spark of that energy around, we'll be all running towards Marrakesh for sure. So there's no doubt.
I'll be there too then.
Will you be wearing your gens?
So yeah, I'll be wearing my bells. Yes, for those that've been there, I tend to wear bells. I'm sure it makes no sense to anybody, but there you go. So I'm going to jump back to Michael, who is relatively quiet, from Elle Magazine in Mexico. And I've joined again a few questions here. How will the consumer behavior change after months of quarantine? Would you believe, what do you believe will be luxury customers' greatest deciding factor when purchasing, considering travel after the borders open?
So luxury customers, they all want to get out of their house to go anywhere. They're less demanding about where they go. Obviously, they're going to be traveling domestically. So for example, we're working with our partners, whether they're hotels, tour operators, to highlight the North American destinations on our Instagram channels. And our agents, our customers, other agents, other customers are looking at it we're all in this together. All we want to do is inspire people to travel. That's it. Because we know if travel comes back, we're all going to benefit. And we're helping customers make right decisions, working with our best hotel partners that are going to be most flexible, that are going to make them feel comfortable to do forward bookings.
Very, very true. I think that I think nobody has a doubt that travel will come back, and I think that reliance on each other and knowing who you can call at the end of the day, relying on the hotels and local experts are going to be more important than ever, because that's where you're really going to get your true facts. I mean, Farhad's the first one; he's in media, so it's so hard to get real data and know if that's the real thing. So I think having a community that we've nurtured for so many years, you will have your contact at the end of the line that you can call and say, tell me the real deal. Is it safe? Can I send them? Who's going to pick them up? And I think that's going to make the biggest difference at the end of the day, for sure.
Yeah, no, there's nothing more valuable than a good hotelier, because a good hotelier could make that difference to the client and make the agent and the client feel comfortable.
I agree.
And we appreciate you all.
And that's one of the things that Serge said earlier, which I couldn't agree more with. And I've used the material before. Knowledge is different than information. Information is, you're Googling it, but knowledge is up here. And so, as Michael said, the hotelier or on the ground, handler or somebody that you have a familiarity with will be able to sort things out once the shit hits the fan, God forbid.
God forbid. For sure. And I'll continue with you, Farhad. I wanted to ask you, from where you're standing, and how do you perceive this? Portugal has really come out as a benchmark in the industry. I think, they've been very, very quick to create a stamp of approval, the safe and clean guarantee. And I think a lot of people are looking at them as a benchmark for the future. At the same time, we've been here debating about the importance of relationship, and how much do you think a stamp like that is important and will catch on or not? Or do you think that people are going to rely more on these contacts and relationships? How do you see that? Is that a trend?
Well, I sort of think that those sort of things are hyperbole. Everybody wants to put a label on something. And the old adage, you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig, but I mean, Portugal will do well because it's sparsely populated. You can go to places like Alentejo and get a farmstead and be left alone. And I think that's where people are going to try to gravitate toward exclusive hire properties. You're already seeing a lot of hotel properties reduce some of their accommodations to exclusive use properties. So if you've got standalone dwellings that you could sort of sequester off, people will want to do that. And to Serge's point, that life is becoming a much more localized community. You want to spend time with people that you really have affection for. So you're going to get rid of the wider circle of acquaintances that you have and really just spend more time once we come out of this, wherever you happen to be, if you're already coming out of it or will be coming out of it, with people that you really enjoy. So if they say, let's go, for example, to Marrakesh and hang out by the pool, you'll say, well, if they're making that decision, it's good enough for them, and they're getting on a plane or they're getting on a jet, we'll do that. So you'll do that. And so the idea is, at the end of the day, you'll coalesce together, but you'll do it in a way that you feel comfortable with, in a milieu that has some kind of familiarity. But Portugal is doing very, very well. There are other regions. I mean, we talked about this earlier when Michael mentioned Iceland. They're again going to non-population areas. Scotland will do very, very well. And if you're in America, you can go to the West, and they're already their properties and hotel groups. They're doing skip a key initiatives, so that they're reducing that interactivity between people with the whole social distancing. But again, at the top tier of the market, you'll have properties that have more than one or two F&B outlets. So you'll have opportunities to be spaced out. You'll have different places to sit. There won't be as many pinch points on property. So you'll be able to feel like, okay, well, this is my holiday, but I'm having it in a different place. I'm having the experiences, the intangibles, the food and beverage. But as Danny Meyer said yesterday, he doesn't feel comfortable opening restaurants that are half full with some guy in a gas mask and gloves coming and serving you. Who wants to do that? You just rather stay at home and have a pizza.
For sure. No, for sure. And by the way, Serge, I don't know if you're following the chat, but I think I've just created a movement to go to Marrakesh. So I think I've caught the problem. You're going to have to do something about that, because if somebody can do something, it's you. But I think everybody's kind of getting excited, which is a good thing. And exactly to your point, Farhad.
Let's go to Jeddah.
But that's the key, right? I mean, if you get a group of friends going and they're all going, then suddenly it's a good enough reason to be there. So I think that's going to be the leading force for sure, no doubt about that. Natalie, the next question is for you. I've combined two journalists. One is Top Destinos, which is an important magazine in Brazil focused on luxury tourism, and the other one is Natalie Klein in Mexico, who was a judge for travel and leisure, and she's a communications advisor to luxury brands. Do you believe that consumers in general will be more aware and concerned about a brand's social responsibilities? How can we ensure that this is not just storytelling to communicate intention and purpose, but these are actually actionable? How do we hold brands accountable?
I think when we have times like this, it's really time when you gotta bring the truth that your whole company has as a purpose. So some of the brands, of course, and they've been showing, and the greenwashing, they've been showing so much that they don't walk the talk. But I think that it's not going to be a movement for the whole the consumers as a mass. I don't think we're going to have the whole mass moving to a more conscious or more awareness of the processes of the brands, but a few will. And I think that's the one that we have to focus. I think they really will respect, and they will even willing to pay more, that they know that the social and environment responsibility with the brand, and that it doesn't mean you cannot build this within 60 days. So yeah. Lucky us, we've been dealing with this, with all the chain, the supply chain for more than 10 years. So when we get to a time like this is its value. You really can feel the value of having a brand that people respect. And I really think that the brands that they haven't been doing their job, their work, their homework, I think right now they're going to have a really hard time, because it's very hard to build something that is not true during this period. Because I do really think that the people, they are looking with different glasses. And I really hope so. I hope that people are going to be each time more conscious, and they're going to understand. I think with the fashion perspective, they're really going to understand the cycle of the clothing, because we've been in an industry that is being very crucified, very judged, because we really haven't done our homework for the past 10 years. But the ones that started, I think really there's a really great time to change the image of the fashion industry. We're the second world that we employ. The first women in the number of people which we employ is the first one that employs women. So it's the whole chain that it's very, very important to keep on going. So I really hope that people, they are going to see more value on the brands, that they really look into the impact that they cause. Something that is being told and a little there and little here, but I really think that now that people are becoming more aware of the importance of the transparency of the whole process and the brands.
I think it's very true, and I think that more than I don't know if everybody's aware that there's about 7 tons of clothes that are burnt on a regular basis in the fashion industry. And so it is an industry that was screaming that needed to look through its processes. And I think that the hospitality industry also is in a very similar way. There's many ways to be more efficient. And one of the things that I try to always advocate in the talks is, if you don't have a social responsibility purpose side of your business, then work on it. This is the time, you have the time. So use this, because it's going to be part of the decision factor. The luxury market, and I agree with you, Natalie, the luxury market will very often be willing to pay more, or to give up that discount in order to feel good about their purchase. Otherwise, every time you buy, especially in the luxury market, you have maybe you feel a little guilty saying so many people lost their jobs and I'm here splurging. But if I splurge, and by doing that, I'm contributing, I can be proud of what I'm doing. And I think that applies to fashion. And it's great to hear you say it, because you're in fashion, we're in travel, and that's connecting us all. And it's so important. So
I know Serge wanted to say something, but I just want to jump in and just say how this relates to travel. I mean, as planes get more and more withdrawn from service, as load factors decrease, as prices become higher, we are going to travel in a totally different way than we did, just like we should be buying things in a different way than we did. So not this sort of, you buy it, you wear it 10 times and you get rid of it. Investing in provenance, investing in craftsmanship, investing in heritage, on the fashion side of things, and on the hospitality side of things, maybe not doing 6 city breaks to Estonia, and instead, spending money and, doing a week somewhere that's actually much more meaningful. So we're, those days, I think for the foreseeable future are over. And on the fashion side, I'm glad they are, because that sort of throwaway culture was terrible, and it should have never begun with.
Been allowed. Yeah.
Totally agree.
Serge.
Yes, thank you.
Serge was raising his hand like we're in school.
Yeah, he's European.
I've tried to.
Anyway,
I think that there is a few things. That first of all, when you talk about ethics, I think that the thing that this COVID-19 situation has done is that people have kind of realized that it's a big dress rehearsal for the next fight. There's going to be global warming. I think that the reality of it is that the narrative of the pathogen wiping up humanity has been in every single movies for the last 50 years, and so we know that we've been warned that it could happen, and we've been warned many times that it will be the case. But we also it's a bit like when you're smoking, it's written on the packet of cigarettes, but you say not today, I'll have another one, and I think nobody has done anything because he thought it will never happen. And I think that this is probably the first time in humanity at a global level that people realize that actually, cause have some consequences. And that therefore, like when something bad happens somewhere, they can have huge consequences at some stage. The second thing is that, to be honest, most of us have been sheltered for any kind of misery around the world. We had obviously our personal drama and tragic things happening to us, but not at this level when you can have lost someone due to COVID-19, but probably many people who've lost their business or their jobs and so on and so on. So I think that it's creating a new level of empathy where people are far more in tune about how responsible people are in general. And my view is that I hope also that, and I'm sure you didn't choose that word on purpose, but I wouldn't like to hold in many ways company accountables, because I think we should get away from this name and shame culture. But it's more like customer will basically choose by people who make the effort to have total transparency on what they do. And what's happening in America, where obviously that it's people want to be part of a big corp, and when you're part of a big corp, you basically let an audit company invading your account, but also what you do, not only with your clients, but also all your stakeholders, whatever it's your partners, your employees, but also planet Earth, and how you give back and how you improve the benefits to still be part of that movement. And it allows them to not only get new customers, but also get the best employee possible. And I think we're going to see more on that. Like we were saying before, there'll be more collaborations, and there will be hopefully a bunch of maybe hoteliers and travel agents, or somebody who basically going to create something under one hat, where people will have a seal of approval that they're operating under a certain code of ethics that they all share. And I think it'll be a great news, and people will spend a bit of money in doing this, and the customers will choose them because they are transparent on this.
For sure. Michael, is that something you're seeing with your clients? Because you're already looking, it's not at the same volume, but you're having bookings. And have you seen a trend, or do you foresee a trend coming, or what's your finger on the pulse there?
Well, I mean, people always want to do business with people that do the right thing. But I would also add in, many of the people on this call, we're all in the travel business. And although it's relatively miserable for everyone in the travel business these days, the financial markets are pretty much hanging in there. I mean, the NASDAQ is up for the year. People are traveling, people are spending money. And, we're seeing bookings to places like Amangiri. And when a client goes to Amangiri, think of the impact that could possibly have on that whole community where the rates are relatively high and there are so many people employed at those properties. It's no different than Marrakesh. I mean, there are so many amazing hotels in Marrakesh that literally, could feed, hundreds of people. So when people get out there and travel, they are doing the right thing because they are helping people, all the way, down the chain.
Can I raise mine?
You can plus.
Sure. Go right ahead, Serge.
Just jump in.
I'd like to plus Michael on that. I think for me, one of the things that's been quite interesting is the thing that, I think for the last, since I think the WTTC was created, the WTTC was created at the beginning to make basically governments taking travel seriously. And that was the whole purpose when the WTTC was created originally. It was like government didn't thought that the hospitality business was, a serious business. They thought it was like there was big industry, chemical, transport, all the things, but hospitality was like this little thing somewhere. And most people have Ministry of Tourism very late in the cycle. And I think that the tension that you see today, which is quite interesting, like Michael was saying, is like, you probably have seen that, about 2 weeks ago, everyone wanted to close their borders in Europe. Now it seems like everybody is going to have more or less the border opens. And Ryanair said they're going to have 1,000 flights a day. Greece is open. And I think what's happening is that the biggest problem is that government at the moment have a huge economic problems. And they're realizing that actually one of the biggest the biggest industry is actually hospitality. And I think for the first time in many ways is that governments are realizing that they're taking stock and taking notice that this is a lot of job that is at stake and they need to be maintained one way or the others to actually, pretend the fabric of the economy, and that hospitality play far more than a role, which is a job. They actually maintain the cohesive unity of the society for the
sanity.
The sanity, and when I arrived in England for the first time, when somebody explained that a pub mean actually public house. This is a place where a community gather to share a drink and basically meet one another. And I think that people are starting to realize that finally hospitality play this huge economic role, but obviously a huge part for us interacting as a community and being sane and being entertained and it's very cohesive. So I think that's something which is actually amazing to see.
No, it's beautiful. And I think one of the things, I was speaking to Natalie just before this, because of course you're the new face on the block. And I said, you met my friends, how are you? And she says, it's also light. You guys are so it's so much fun to talk to you. My industry is heavy.
You better believe it, baby.
Really, I'm in the wrong business. I just realized now. I'm totally wrong, guys. I have to shift.
Well, for a woman that's been recognized 5 consecutive years as the 500 most influential people in fashion, I think the fashion industry would be very upset if we stole you. So we'll go visit your stores for sure.
Tina, can I ask Natalie a question?
Go ahead. I won't stop anybody.
Sorry, Natalie, I just wanted to hear your thoughts about the pressures that are on big box department stores around the world. We're seeing headlines on a daily basis that it's their demise, that they're, they don't have the cash flow, they don't have the infrastructure, well, where do you stand on this?
I think there's a consequence because I think they've been doing an awful job for so many years. And now when we come to this, it's really painful. I don't think it's just because of the crisis. I think all that they've been building for the past 10 years, the customer relationship is awful and the customer service is non-existent. It's really, so when the Americans, they created the e-commerce, which is so easy to do and so you're home. And if you don't leave your home, if you're not going to have a great service, you can have it at home and it's yourself. So I think they really focused on the lack of quality that they had. So now when the clients, they didn't have any trade-offs of going to the shop and buying online. They really missed it. They didn't really build the relationship that it's person to person.
No, I think we're in. Are we losing you?
It goes back again.
And
the personal relationship again.
Yeah. No, sorry, we were losing you.
Okay.
You're back.
Okay. So we think we're very much a service provider. So I don't think they're being giving a service as they should. So I think it's a consequence. I got good.
Yeah. No. It's true. I
Okay.
think it's so nice because there's such a huge intersection, and this is where I think it's so important to get people from outside of travel, so that the travel industry doesn't live in a bubble of just travel. What you're speaking to is the core of the hospitality industry, and when we look at who's going to survive the storm and who's going to come out stronger in the storm, we talk about the general managers who are true hosts, who have been interacting, who know their guests, who haven't been stuck in the office just answering emails. Look, you're creating a trend here, Serge.
No, one of the things I wanted to say is a gentleman that I've gotten to know over the years is Brunello Cucinelli, and of course Brunello Cucinelli always talks about the importance of terroir and provenance and craftsmanship and employing local people and local craftsmen. And it goes again to what Serge was saying, this idea of a community where we're all going to become our worlds, despite the world being a much bigger place, it's going to sort of come closer and closer and closer. And we're going to find these commonalities with certain people that we didn't think we had. And we're going to say, you know what, the dirt bag over there that I thought I really like, he was a total douche and I can't stand him. And we're going to start reassessing our interpersonal relationships with certain people, certain brands, certain experiences.
For sure. It's very true. And I have to just put a shout out here. Unfortunately, very sadly, I discovered the brand Brunello Cucinelli, and it was Ugo, the owner of Rosa Alpina's fault. He told me there was a little store behind the hotel, and it has been probably the biggest issue because I have left half of my savings there. It's one of my favorite brands now. So I will look forward to getting him on the panel, Farhad. I'm running after you with this contact. He's phenomenal. So the last question, and I'm going to throw it to Michael because Michael, it's a bench. He's fantastic. Michael, you've been too quiet, so I'm going to, nudge you a little bit. It's a question from Ellen Asmadale at Afar, and it talks about how can content help inspire? I'd love for you to elaborate on that.
Okay, I mean, content. SmartFlyer, it's all about working with great travel advisors, great clients. And, Arena has developed all of our content with her team, and that does inspire travel. I mean, people do look at our site. They follow us on Instagram. We've worked with a lot of hoteliers, tour operators to collaborate on our Instagram channels. Clients love that. It's no different than, print or magazines. That's what's driving business. The same thing with trade shows. People go to trade shows and they meet people, they experience different things, they talk about different conversations. I mean, think about restaurants. Anyone that's going to go to a restaurant, the first thing you do is Google it. You want to see, what does that website look like? What is, the menu look like? That's what today's customer wants. And it's very, very important. And we're putting a lot of resources into that to continue, to help our customers and our agents create opportunities and our hoteliers.
I agree. Yes. Go ahead.
Well, I think also that because you were talking about inspiring people, I think that we're at a time now where I think we're all a bit rattled and we're all a bit, in many ways, emotional about what's happening. So we very much that we're all living an experience that is very, visceral at many points. And I think that we need to kind of engage this kind of a emotional space. And I think the more you can have a content which is very emotionally driven, the better it is. I particularly love the video that Maya Kurmo in New York City has done about New York being resilient, and I think that I watch it, and I think New Yorkers must have been inspired, but actually it inspired me just watching it, and it was a message based which is all on emotions, on the resilience, and I think that a lot of the content that we'll see will be based on that, and I think that it's quite interesting is that when I was studying marketing a very long time ago, they say that there is different value in a product, and it's the same thing in content. Is that in a product you have 3 different values. One is going to be the functional, which is basically, you can say, if you are in fashion, is that I wear something to make sure I get warm, and or to cover the right parts, and the second part will be something which is going to be social, and which is about it's a nice brand, and the last one will be emotional. Is like what's the fabric, what's the story, what is the narrative, and so on and so on. And I really believe that we move from the information economy to the emotional economy, and this thirst for emotion and inspirations is very much in our customer, and this thirst wants to be quenched by something which is a great narrative and really emotional. So it goes beyond what Fahad was saying. It's like it goes far beyond the informations. The content needs to be have a real knowledge, but a real story. And I think great inspirations for me in terms of creating community is that a sentence from probably the greatest thinker and of the 21st century, which is Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones, when he said that what binds people is it flags, is it army, it is country, and he said no, stories, because nobody can defeat them and nobody can kill them. And I think that great story, the great emotional narrative is what basically will get us out of this.
That's a beautiful message.
And to add into that, the reason why people travel is they want to create their own stories every single day. So all of our mutual clients, they want to get on a plane, whether it's a commercial plane, private plane, they want to drive, and they want to create stories and memories every day. I also wanted to add in that in the US, as part of the CARES Act, the government reduced the federal excise tax on aviation to 0. So in essence, that's a 7.5% discount. Plus, with the drop in demand, we're able to get private planes on average for 15 or 20% less. And that is, helping clients go to some of the more untouched parts of the US, which again is going to allow them to create, stories and memories every day.
Yeah, and I love what Natalie had said earlier, that fashion and travel are both so important, and they're so similar because customers use both to escape reality. And I think that's such a beautifully put, because the more we talk, the more synergy. You notice that the language is the same, the storytelling, the essence, so it's so exciting. Suddenly, you think, wow, why do you have Natalie Klein's fashion? And then by the end of the talk, you're like, well, obviously we're doing the same thing. We're almost in the same language, communication, purpose. So I think it's phenomenal. I wanted to ask all of you, and I'll go around, if, and this is just to round up the talk, if our entire audience forgot everything that we discussed, and I hope they don't, but if they did, and you wanted to leave them with one message, what would be that message? And I'll start, Michael, with you.
Things are going to come back. I mean, you've got to be, an optimist and just predict into the future and not worry about when is this going to end, but worry about what is your mutual client going to want and how are you going to serve them best.
Nicely put. I see Farhad is pouring champagne, so I better go to you because we're
rosé, baby, rosé.
Go for it.
As Michael said, I think the message is this too shall pass. Now, when it passes, it depends where you are. And we talked about a wave coming, and certain places are going to be ahead of the wave. Certain places are not going to be. So as when we were talking in the prep up session, places like Indonesia closed overnight. And we talked about our mutual friend James McBride over at NIHI. He was supposed to come back after 6 weeks there. They shut the country, and he's been marooned I mean, okay, there are worse places you could be
Worst
marooned.
places to be.
Yeah, but he's been marooned there for an additional 6 weeks. But the point being that a lot of people have it a lot worse. There will be opportunities, as Michael said. The market's doing well, and if you can pick and choose the right kind of experiences and the right things that sort of resonate with you as a human being or as your family or your loved ones, you can make it through.
I couldn't agree more. Natalie.
I think I will close up with, I think the universe is giving us a chance to reset and transform. So we have to make sure that we're leaving behind things that they're not going to be needed for the future. And we have thoughts and new consciousness and new habits. But we have to let go things that we've been doing that they won't serve for us anymore in all the industries.
That's a beautiful message, because so many people want to go back to the norm. I wanted just to get normal. And I think we can't allow ourselves to waste this. It would be a disaster if we actually went backwards, right? Totally. I think what you said is beautiful. We have to create a new and more exciting, more efficient, more modern, more responsible future. And so it would be a wasted opportunity. Very well put. Tell us, Serge, what is your message?
First message is like I will start by a bit of a little joke, which I quite like, where it's like I received one of these funny posts, and one was saying like this is the first time a generation has been offered to basically save the world by just sitting on their sofa while watching Netflix. Let's make sure we don't screw that one up. And I think that. So the thing is that the first thing is that I'm sure we can do much better than that. I think that, like Michael say, I think that there'll be better days. And I think that one of the things that people need to understand is that this is the first time that this is not a crisis. Basically what's happening is that the world is on a handbrake at the moment. Basically trade has in many ways, bar the stock market, very much collapsed. And I think what's going to happen is that when you drop to a plane where you are at, if you go to 1,000 to 0, just the effort to go 0 to 100 is a huge step up. And we have seen that, in China, they talk about revenge purchase. We all know that, Hermes, as one of the shop in China for Hermes, as breaking all the records of sales in one day. In terms of in terms of the car industry, they recover everything in 3 months. So I think that what is important is we need to be ready for that recovery. But in the meantime, is like we need to look after each other as a community. And it's never I often say that this is a competition of generosity, which some people took it wrongly, because for me it's like competition of generosity is like you don't give and people take everything. It's a one-way street, and I think that lots of people will have to compromise and learn to compromise now and try to be kinder to one another. And I think it's going to create a world that's going to be much nicer, much kinder, and also a world where everything will be transparent and people won't have time for much bullshit anymore, which is probably a good news.
It's very good news. It's excellent news. I had asked all the speakers if they would be willing to stay past our official talk to answer a few questions, and all of them very nicely agreed to do that.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to go ahead and dive into some of the questions that we received from our audience. And I'll start with our dear Martin Rapp, that I'm sure most of you in travel know and love. Hi, Martin.
We love Martin.
So Martin asks, don't you think that clients aged 25 to 45 will travel first, since they feel safer than older clients who will hold back from traveling until a vaccine is found? And anybody who wants to jump in here.
Well, I mean, I think, I don't know, 25 to 45, maybe 25 to 55, 25 to 60. I do think the younger ones will travel first. I mean, that's without a doubt. But I think everyone's going to travel. People are just desperate to get back on the road and get out of their houses.
Yeah. No, and I think age limits right now are for the past. It's and I mentioned it before. I think if you're 65 and you're a risk taker and you're a fit traveler, you're going to travel no matter what your age is. You can be a 40-year-old and you are always cautious. You're going to remain cautious and you're not going to leave your house. So I don't know how much age.
I want to add in. I mean, I would love to go on a trip with Martin Rapp. So when you're ready, Martin, let me know and we'll go.
I agree. Yes. I feel like a teacher here. Go ahead.
We're so respectful of you.
And, you are.
I think it's like Michael says. I don't think it's a question of age. It's more a question of your own risk attitudes toward a virus that that's as touching many different people, but some people are more vulnerable than others. But I think it will depend also probably of your means of transportation. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to see, we all know that people say they're going to be domestic. I think we're going to see a huge, a huge movement for road trip. And I think where people are going to take their cars, go in RVs and travel as a family. And I think this will be all possible. And so it will depend. It's a combination of more, it's not the age, it's like the risk that people will be taking in a kind of situation that they will be, in the way they will be traveling. Because if you travel by private jet and if you go to a private villa, well, you might be older, it might be fine, as long as, the operators guarantee you that everywhere will have a funky mask and funky gloves and make sure that it doesn't look too clinical. You might say that's just good enough for you. And some other people will say, well, I'm not really feeling safe but I'm all for a great road trip, because who didn't want to do a road trip? It's like, so there is new things that are going to be, I think what's going to be interesting in many ways, that a lot of new products are going to be created.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody that they were saying that there are travel agents now, and Michael, this might be in your wheelhouse, that they are booking RVs, chauffeured RVs, so they could travel around the US, around North America especially, in their own hermetically sealed container, without any interaction with anybody else, except maybe for a drive-through or whatever, but they get to still travel, but they're doing it in their own way, in a way that they feel comfortable.
No, we are. We just started a partnership with a company that does that in the western part of the US, and it's been extremely popular. So that's a great point.
Very, very true. I'm going to ask another question from Fernando Serna. Fernando used to be the head of sales for East Miami. He's now the director of sales for one hotel in Miami, a very dear friend. And I think his question applies to everybody. And he asks, will travelers associate price with safety? And I think it's one that Natalie can also tap into, because when you consider companies and luxury market, or usually you associate them to higher standards in the quality of the fabric, in the natural fibers in the fabric, and in luxury as well with it. Do you think that there's an association going forward?
I really don't know. I think they will, and I hope they will. There'll be an association, but I don't think I can answer with the travel with safety. I don't think I can relate to that. I think I'll leave to the experts.
But I'll ask you something, since I have you before I jump on to my student here, Mr. Serge, who's a great student, very well behaved. I will be writing to your parents, very, very, very impressed. So Natalie, I have one question.
I've always been a teacher's pet.
I can tell. I'm in love with you already. So Natalie, I wanted to ask you a question as an example of an avid luxury traveler. You love to travel. You travel with your family. It's and I think you can answer, maybe not on behalf of the travel community, but you have a very important answer on behalf of the traveler. How do you feel about your next trip?
I think I travel a lot, especially to work, and I think I have to travel 5 times a year for the fashion calendar, and I think this is very insane. And I think I will reduce the amount of traveling so much, and I'll make sure that they're going to be meaningful. They're really going to, if I cannot replace for something that I can do online, I'll travel for work. Otherwise, I'll do where I am with the family. But I think for the family, it's all about safety first. So I really think it's going to take a little while. I have little kids, as you've seen, they're walking around. I think really it's going to be, and I think we really would assume that we will go to places that we feel more protected. We have a house in New York where we used to live. So the first thing that the kids are asking is when we're going to go back to New York. So really, it's something that they're really trying to escape in some way to the reality that we're living here today.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's just funny to mention New York because some people think, these urban meccas with so many people, are they really going to be the first ones to enjoy because they're not the most secluded? But it all depends on where your home is and where you feel, where your psychological safety is. So you're like, I want to go to New York because I feel safe. It's like, well, that's interesting.
No, we like to hear that, but I also wanted to add in that, for some of the bigger brands like Four Seasons announced a partnership with Johns Hopkins, and they're going to help them with, different ways to make sure, safety is first and have a chief hygiene officer at every hotel. Clients like that. That's important. Accor came out with an announcement, Marriott has done it too. So I think some of these bigger brands in one way or another might have a little bit of an advantage. But then again, all of the big players and even the independents, they're going to have to address this to give people, a sense of mind.
So can I just
wait?
ask
I have to give my student Serge some space because he is so quietly waiting, and he's gotten the golden star of the talk. So yes, Serge, tell us.
No. I just wanted to jump on the original point very quickly. I don't think that price is a function of safety, in the same way that I don't think Ferrari is the safest car over Volvo. I think it's more part of your culture and your DNA. It's like people will look like what is the interesting DNA of a brand, and if I trust the DNA rather than the price that is attached to it, because the price will be a function of probably something else. That could be the emotional value, the scarcity, the access, something else. So it'll be very much about more what is your DNA and what's your track record on that field, and also what's your commitment to care of your customer. Because some people will shift just because they really care about their customers, and they can switch that care from the experience they provide to the care they provide when they're in need.
So I'll switch over to Farhad, which is the group at the back of the class that's causing all this trouble. So fine, tell me what. Exactly.
No, I was just going to make 2 points. I was going to say, I agree with Serge completely and wholeheartedly, but I think some of this is a function of socioeconomics. If you are better off and you can do certain things, that it does create a separation within the strata of society. And we've had a couple of questions already on it about that. But the other question and the other point I wanted to make to Michael's point was that for example, this morning I was watching my dear friend Andrew Ross Sorkin on Squawk Box, and he was talking about the fact that people are moving outside of New York City, where I grew up and where I'm from. And they're not only moving not to the suburbs, they're moving out to the Catskills or further on. So the cosmopolitan effervescence and that wonderful petri dish that was the cultural hub of these cities is now slightly under threat in the short term, because people are saying, you know what, I don't want to be around all these people. They're all a threat to me. I'm picking up again on Natalie's point of going to New York, and I want to be away from people as much as I can. Here in the UK, going to the Cotswolds, going to Cornwall, going to Scotland, in New York, in the rest of other parts of the world as well. So I think there is that fear factor that is sort of percolating underneath all the actions that we take. But we can't take them, the old adage is everybody's a long-term investor until they have a short-term loss. So you can't sort of focus on the short-term issues that we're having to make these long-term decisions, I would say.
I agree.
Yeah, no, I full-heartedly agree. And I have to just point out that within all this chaos, I feel so honored and I am so lucky. And if it wasn't for this crisis, I would have never been able to get Serge to stop, all the madness of his busy schedule, to get Michael and Farhad and Natalie Klein all together to brainstorm together. So every week, I always say this is my favorite moment, and it's sharing with you guys and to be able to get your attention and your time and your knowledge and your insights. So I cannot thank you enough for agreeing to be on the panel, to sharing all of your insights. I could have stayed here for another 3 hours because this is so much fun. So thank you for the audience and for
I still have a half a bottle of wine to go. Where are we going?
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you. It was fantastic. I'm looking forward to travel with you.
We'll see you all soon.
Natalie. Hello, Michael.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you,
bye-bye,
Natalie.
Take care.
Enjoy.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you. Lovely seeing you guys.
Love you guys. Kisses. Thank you.
All the best from the back of the class. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.